to some of the stories that other panelists have shared, I did not plan to get into technology as part of my high school figuring out what I wanted to be when I grew up. I started my technology career as a backpacker in Australia, working for the head of a technology department in an investment bank. And without trying to give too much away about my age, we were designing web pages for the Y2K experience, and how we were going to protect our applications and our digital environment from Y2K, which was less of a big bang than people thought it might be. I would say some of the things that I have learned specifically through my career journey to where I am today are, rather than focused on individual technologies and digital experiences, is really around the people. I've learned a lot around my ability to help others to grow and develop in their experience with technology, being able to use technology to solve some really challenging business problems and client problems where technology becomes the enabler, and being able to understand what those problems are and how to design solutions using the technologies has ended up being something that I've discovered over time. I'm quite good at bringing people together to solve. So my biggest thought or learning from that career path is really around taking opportunities to find out what you are good at and taking opportunities to find what you are passionate about. They are not necessarily the same thing, but if you can drive the two together, you end up with a much more satisfactory career journey.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I think this is such an important conversation to talk about career journeys and how they actually happen compared to how you plan them sometimes. My own background is that I was very academically focused for a long time, to the point where I was in a PhD program. That didn't turn out to be what I enjoyed or was good at, and I ended up in various teaching jobs. And finally, I came to Digital Moment, where I get to do really cool things with students and teachers all across Canada, which is really exciting. I will say the live stream is now working. So some of you watching on YouTube may have just joined us in the middle. I'll say that we just so far went through some introductions and general discussions of how our panelists got in their careers. I will put their names in the chat so you can recognize them, but we will move on to our next question, which is focusing more on digital skills. So which digital skills have been most important in your career? And for this one, we're going to start with Theresa.
Thank you, Susan. I'd like to touch really on what Tina was saying earlier about how important it is to be adaptive, because if I were to think about which digital skill was most important in my career, I would say really it's exactly that, which again, it might not be per se, it might not be a real digital skill, but the fact that we need to constantly adapt, we need to constantly be ready for how technology changes and embrace that, I think it's what was critical for me in order to be able to keep up with my career, to keep up with again, with technology overall. And the mindset of being open to change, the mindset of accepting that what you know today is not necessarily what will serve you tomorrow. I think that's very critical. Again, if I look back at what I studied in university and the courses I took, whether it was programming or pure engineering, or whether it was whatever, RF design and such, I look back and I'm thinking, well, what I learned those years, you know, back in at that time, and what I am doing today, or what I did through my career right as I started, were totally different, as if it was, you know, like we're speaking now a different language. What is common though, again, is that I had to stay focused and open to being adaptive, and to be able to adjust fast, to be able to really to be ready for that change, and to understand that, well, yeah, I learned that in school, doesn't necessarily apply here, but I'm changing fast. And yes, again, it might not be particularly a digital skill, but I believe it does fit in today's world really well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's one thing that we find when we're teaching digital skills a lot is often it seems like we're teaching specific coding languages, but we're more teaching how do you learn them, how do you play around with them, those things. Jane, what digital skills or related skills have been important for you?
Yeah, sure. So I think I make a similar point that actually I think the skill that I probably use the most is not maybe a direct digital skill, but I would say it's problem solving. That's the one thing that I utilize most on a daily basis, whether that's in, how do we solve a design challenge on a website, or how do we, design for using a certain technology. But that might also be, how do we change our team setup and our processes that as an organization that enable us to do our best work. So the ability to problem solve, I think, has definitely helped me hugely in my career. And as I say, is the thing that I probably spend 90% of my time doing.
Great. And Tina?
I think in a similar theme, I mean, I could point to one particular item like coding, but I think the core function of that was to help me to break down problems into their smallest components and to remove the noise. So when I think about that, like for instance, now I work with digital scientists and epidemiologists who are looking for instance, at time series analysis. But really, I think back to like, what did I learn as an electrical engineer? Like, what are all the similarities? How can I pick out what are the core elements so that I can communicate? So it's really being able to get to the nugget of what the issue is that we're trying to deal with. How are we speaking the same language? So I think that, we can talk about problem solving skills, but I think that one of the big things that coding was fundamental for me was like, what is the issue, the core issue, and how can we break it down into its smallest steps?
Great. So a related question about technology is I want to hear about how technology has changed in your field or how you're using technology in a day-to-day way. So Danasco, I'll go to you for this.
So I think the biggest thing going off of how technology has changed my work and my job is one, definitely giving me a new experience, and two, making my work more accessible. So for giving me a new experience, yeah, you're right. Your career path definitely will change. I feel like you normally don't stick with what you thought you were going to do. Like for me, my plan was to be 18 and move out of my community, go to university, do the 4-year thing. And that's not what happened. I stayed here for a summer. I became a student at Onaki, and then instead of actually going to a university, I stayed to build on my skills, like as a teacher and a mentor. Because problem solving is a big thing, especially in my work. Our machines will do exactly what you tell them to do, and that's what the problem is. You have to rely on yourself to be able to fix these things and create these things, and you have to use your own brain power to make your own projects. And I think just doing that and troubleshooting issues yourself has really given me I guess a backbone because sometimes it is frustrating, especially since I started getting into coding and AI. I started with block coding, so that's a little similar. And I actually incorporated that into a culture lesson, and it's like a pattern maker for traditional wear. And it took a while to develop for me personally, and because I just had to keep going back and back. And when I finally got the code right, the math for my project was wrong, so I had to start all over. And that, for giving me a new experience, is definitely one example, but also the technology being more accessible, not just to me, but to my students. Part of our job here at Fab Lab Onaki is to go to different isolated communities, native communities, to teach them the tech we're doing. So in that way has also made it more accessible for other people to get to experience what they wouldn't have otherwise, because we're in a city right now. This is Gatineau, right? And I'm not from the city, and a whole lot of other Native people aren't from the city either, and we don't get opportunities like this. So I think those are the two big things of how technology has changed my job, is new experiences and definitely making my work more accessible.
Thanks. And I'll go to Theresa now.
Yeah, definitely like what Danasco said about accessibility, right? So since COVID, people do work from home, attending classes from home, and that's with technology. So also on top of that, it is communication. It makes communication easier. You get to show presentations, and even moving away from like paper-based documentation to wireless connections, which is also supposed to be good for the environment, is definitely helpful. Also, like everyone said, like at the end of the day, it's up to you to figure out what you want and need. And even with like Google searching and stuff. So I do a lot of researching, and definitely having the, for example, using the minus to exclude certain words, and like the quotations to make sure these words are in the search. So yeah, that helps out a lot with like gathering information.
Great. And we'll go to Chloe finally.
So I think for me, I would say expanding the landscape of what's possible, and increasing the opportunities to have an impact on the areas that I care about is probably the biggest shift that I've seen. Instead of being very traditionally focused on one technology or one application or one particular learning set, bringing everything that you know together and connecting it to the outside world, what we care about in terms of whether it's climate, whether it's ESG, whether it's data analytics, and the insight that that data brings us, everything has become a lot more connected. And in my role, I need to be a lot more aware and informed and have opinions about how those connections work, how they relate to the technology teams that I work with, and how they relate to the business problems we're trying to solve. And fundamentally, the clients at the end of the, whether it's at the end of the phone or whether it's at the end of the online digital tools that we provide, understanding their problems and the challenges that they're facing, and how we can support that with our solution design, with the way in which we use technology to move faster and more adaptive. And I think, as somebody else said, that ability to shift between technologies and being able to talk about not just one area, but how they all connect, has become more and more important. And I think specifically on a day-to-day basis, the collaboration tools that are available to us today, particularly during the pandemic, have become more important. Being able to connect with the teams directly. We use whiteboards a lot, we use drawing, and particularly when it comes to solution design and trying to understand the problems that we're solving. We now have had to transfer that to online, and we use online whiteboards, we use online collaboration tools. Much like you would in your social life, we're using them more and more in our online work life as well.
Great, thank you. So now that we've talked a bit about the digital skills, I want to go to the other theme of International Women's Day, which is embrace equity, because equal opportunities are not the only thing that we need to build a fair and equitable society. So my next question is, can you think of a time in your career where you've accessed an opportunity or been empowered by an ally or colleague that helped you reach the point you are in your career today? And I'll go back to Chloe for this one.
I have a few. I've been incredibly lucky in my career with the people that I've worked with, the mentors that I've had, and the sponsorship that I've built along the way. I would say one of the biggest elements for that for me is trust. So building trust in my stakeholders so that they can trust that when they ask me to do something or to think about something, that I actually follow through and I'm committed to delivering. That has been a big element of it. And then being open to building relationships with people that I can learn from, that in turn I trust them. One of the biggest challenges that I found through my career is maybe not necessarily having the most confidence in my abilities and what I bring to the table. I grew up being told I was very bossy. I have learned through the years that that is actually an incredibly valuable skill. It allows you to organize yourself as well as help others. And it enables you to structure and build frameworks around things like problem solving in a way that keep people focused on getting to the end result. Having mentors and managers through my career who've recognized that sometimes before I have, that is a real skill and can bring value to what we're doing in any business environment, in any technology solutions, has been a huge plus for me. And I think part of that is, and back to the trust element, is also finding those opportunities that challenge you, being able to say yes to things that scare you, that challenge the way that you think about how you approach your career, or how you approach what you thought your career might have been, and how that changes over time has been a huge part of my evolution. And a big part of that is saying yes to things that I've potentially been afraid of. And I think traditionally, not necessarily applying for jobs that I'm already good at. I think that's something that's, again, coaching and mentoring along the way has taught me to apply for things and look for jobs that are going to challenge me, but that interest me. Back to that, not necessarily doing things just because you're good at them. I'm good at spreadsheets, but I do not want to live in spreadsheets. But finding the things that you are passionate about and excite you from a learning perspective, and then following those in terms of a career development part, leads to a much more fulfilling career journey, I found.
Great. Yeah, that balance between what you're good at and what you're passionate about, and finding the right balance is really important and can be tricky. Next, I'll go to Raisa on that question.
I must say I'm happy that this question came up, because it's very close to my heart, or the answer is very close to my heart. And I would definitely second what Chloe mentioned, the power of mentorship and the power of networking. I think it's amazing. This is, again, as the most recent example, being my job right now with Fujitsu is what, the power of mentorship and networking is what helped me to get here. I'm grateful to have had an amazing mentor over the past few years. And not only was he a mentor to me, but also my best ally and sponsor and champion, and the one who would put my name out there in a room, the one who would expose me to all kinds of stuff, and genuinely caring about my development. So again, we managed to build that relationship of trust, and I knew that he's, again, genuinely concerned with my success, and all the aspects or strategies that I learned from him were coming from a place, from a positive place, and from his desire of helping me grow. And again, I'm extremely grateful for that. Also, I must say that through my volunteering with Lean in Canada, I was lucky to meet this amazing lady who was an HR executive. And as I decided to switch my career, I reached out to her and I said, well, this is my target company. This is what I would, what I would like to do and such. And she was extremely willing and happy to help me come up with a strategy and with somehow step-by-step approach on how to, this is good things and not so good things that we should do when looking for a change in our careers. So again, I'd like to really emphasize on the importance of networking and mentorship, because to me, at least, it has proven to be priceless. I've grown a lot. At my turn, I am mentoring people. And it's just that relationship that you build with people, the fact that you find you have so many things in common. I learned from my mentor, at the same time my mentor learns from me. I'm teaching, or I'm sharing from my experience with my mentees, but I also learn from them. So it's all a positive relationship there, and I do encourage everyone to use it, because it does help develop personality, develop your professional persona as well. I know, long answer here, but I feel like this is, again, because it's important to have that ally, that mentor, that someone who can speak for yourself and put your name out there.
Yeah, great answer.
Thank you.
And nice to have all that detail on how specifically networking was important for you. So our next question is, thinking back on some of the hurdles you faced in your career, what advice would you have given yourself? Or what do you wish had been in place to help you navigate your career path? And I'll go to Tina with this one.
So this is a really good question. When I reflected on this, I wish I had mentors. So when I started in engineering, I was one of 2 women in electrical engineering. The year before me, there was 1 woman. There was no one that looked like me. There was also this sense that I didn't belong. And so I did have 1 or 2 professors that were encouraging and recognized that I had skill in this area. But that challenge around not having mentors did continue for quite a long time. In that my first few jobs, because there were no, women engineers for me to communicate with, and there was this awkward, how do we interact with this young woman in our, organization? A lot of it would be avoidance, right? We don't want to deal with this because we don't want to be seen as being inappropriate or whatever. So it was kind of quite lonely and quite isolating. So what's really reassuring to me now is, seeing everyone come together to create a better environment for young women. And why I'm so passionate about, I work in the schools, I do whatever I can to try to show people that you are able to do it. So that would be the biggest thing. I mean, it wasn't like I didn't have any positive role models, because there's one particular professor that got me back into my PhD, but that was a huge challenge. So whatever we can do to break that down and to make it better, I think is absolutely the most important thing we can do.
Great. And I'll go to Theresa next.
So in my career journey, like I'm currently looking for a job, right? So what advice that I've been trying to follow is just being aware of all the resources available to me, like job websites all around and stuff, and making connections as well. So trying to make connections with people in my industry, people with more knowledge, and learning from them. In terms of initiatives as well, as you all talked about the importance of mentorship, I would also like to be picked up by a mentor at some point, and learn from them too. Like you guys said, it's like a 2-way learning experience, right? So that would be good. And also what I've noticed in looking for a job is a lot of companies don't get back to you sometimes. If it's not a yes, and then you just don't hear anything, it's not like helpful, I guess, for applicants in a way that, like, I would also like to know like why I didn't get this, like what areas I can improve. Maybe if that was more in place, like I definitely would learn more and like about myself and the job as well. So I feel like that would help in navigating. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for sharing your experience. I know that period can be a hard slog, but keep at it. Going to Danasco next.
So I think one of the biggest hurdles I've definitely faced in my career is lack of equal opportunity. So in order to be doing what I'm doing now, is I had to move out of my community because I didn't have anything like this in my community, and I never had heard about it until COVID happened and this organization went virtual. So if we hadn't done that, I kind of would have like never got a taste of what I'm doing now, right? So for the initiative that I wish had been taken is, like everyone's saying, like mentorship, like that effort. I wish there had been more resources that Indigenous women could go to kind of build on themselves and work on themselves. And we all do that like on a day-to-day basis, but I wish there were places you could like exclusively go to do so, like just to be mentored. So I think the advice I would give myself, going off of what Chloe had said earlier, is like say yes to any opportunities that do scare you. I'm not going to go back and tell Danasco from 2 years ago, don't be afraid to do something, right? Like, because I think being afraid and having doubts is a very natural way that you want to protect yourself from like the job rejection and not like getting a word back from anybody. Like nobody wants to put up with that, right? But my advice would be just say yes to what scares you and be scared and do it anyways.
And then we'll go to Jane.
Yeah, so I think I'd say something probably similar to what Danasco just said, and definitely similar to what Chloe said earlier as well. If I could travel back in time and speak with my younger self, I would say a similar thing around like, don't say no to interesting opportunities, say yes to them, even if you're scared of them, like just, go and do it. But there's some other things I think I say to myself as well. So my younger self, I think I'd say that, sometimes it might feel like you have no direction, and that's okay. Like that's just part of the process that we all go through. Other times, it might be scary to voice your opinion, and it might feel like maybe your opinion or your voice doesn't matter compared to others around you, but that's just not true. It does matter. Keep speaking up, keep going. But also on top of that, like listen to yourself and listen to your needs. And I think one of the really important things, I think Chloe kind of mentioned it earlier as well, was like, to most importantly, just observe the things that give you energy. What are the things that you naturally are doing, that you're naturally spending your time on, because that's where your interest is. And sometimes those things can feel like they're not work because you naturally enjoy doing them. And so sometimes it feels like, oh, that's not a thing I should do because it's not like work. And I've known people who have like fallen into that. It's like, no, it is. Like, get people to pay you for things that you naturally spend your time on and you enjoy doing. Like that's the win-win situation in life, so yeah, those are things that I would go back and yeah, the advice I would give to my younger self.
Thanks. That's some great advice. So that brings us to the end of our panel. I think I've been very fortunate to have these 6 very different but very interesting women, and I wish I had the chance to have deep conversations about each of your careers, because you each do very interesting things in different fields. Thank you all for participating today. I could see everyone smiling and nodding along to the other answers, which was really great. We are going to end it here because I don't see any questions on the YouTube stream, but thank you for participating. Thank you to everyone who watched. Happy International Women's Day.